Hello, peeps and creeps, and welcome to the Fright Club. I'm Gav, he's Danny.
Hello.
We are the Fright Club and this is a brand new episode of Monday Night Frights. On tonight's show, we're talking about Park Chan-wook's vampire classic.
Thirst!
And we're back with episode 6.10 of Monday Night Frights. It's the season 6 finale!
How did we get here? What's going on? It flew by. It
I have no idea,
absolutely
man.
flew in. That's
I have no
crazy.
idea. It feels like we were just recording season 1
I know. It's
a couple
actually,
of weeks ago.
I keep getting reminders now of like videos. And
Yes,
it's like two
like
years
memories.
ago this
Yeah,
day. And I'm like, how
I
is
know.
that 2 years ago?
I
Like,
know.
how did we talk about that 2 years ago? It does not feel like 2 years have flown in, and it doesn't feel like we are now coming to the end of our sixth season.
It's
Like
crazy. I know.
it's mental. It's mental.
So, as always, we will be taking a couple of weeks break
Mhm.
after the season ends, which is this last episode, the finale.
Doesn't mean we're doing nothing. Doesn't mean we're doing nothing.
No,
Stuff's
no,
happening. Keep an eye on the socials because something's coming up.
we will be
Can't
doing
talk. We,
stuff.
won't, we can't say anything
We'll be doing
just yet,
stuff.
but keep an eye on the website and on all the social media, which we will mention at the end, as always.
Uh,
But yes, we're not. We say we're taking a break. We're not. Other stuff's going on.
we're taking a break from the show, Danny. We're always
Yes, just
busy.
the show. We're
We
always
have to
busy.
take a break because we
It's
fucking.
always.
It's only us, so we really need to take a
Well,
break
there's the
every so
occasional
often.
guest. We have the
Oh, well, of
occasional
course,
guest,
yes.
but
There
we are a
is.
consistent element.
It wouldn't be
Yeah,
anything without the guests.
no, we love our guests.
But yeah, so we'll take a break for a couple of weeks and recharge the batteries, and we'll be back um a little bit later in the year. But we wanted to do Thirst
Yes.
because in a couple of weeks it'll be Valentine's Day, and we were talking
Mm-hmm.
about sort of, oh, let's kind of do like kind of romantic
Do
horror
this
films, and we threw a
romanticism.
few different names around there, and we decided on this because we had never seen this.
Neither of us. I know
Neither
of.
of us seen it.
Is this? This
It's
isn't
not
a
the first
first.
one.
It's not a first, but it's a rare occasion that we both haven't
Yeah,
seen one of the films we talk about.
it is quite
Um,
rare,
and
but
we haven't talked about it yet
we
either.
haven't talked about
We've
it
had
one bit.
no, not one bit. In fact, that little bit you heard us mention before, if it's still in the edit, um, is actually us for having our first even
Literally,
mention
yeah.
of it.
Talking about
So
it.
yeah, it's exciting. I'm excited.
I'm
Yeah,
excited to talk about it because
but what was your initial impression?
I loved it. Well, maybe love is a strong word.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed it. I have some negative things to say about it, but it
Mm-hmm.
was mostly positive. Obviously, myself and yourself are big fans of Park Chan-wook.
Myself?
Myself and
You self
myself
myself?
we're big fans of his work. We
Oh
we
yeah.
already covered Old Boy in a previous
Oh my
season,
god.
which I'll put the link up somewhere here.
Phenomenal. Will we get into the rest of the Vengeance trilogy at some point in the
I
future?
hope so. I'd like to do
Sure. Let us
the
know in the
other
comments
Vengeance.
below if
Yeah,
you'd like to
please
see.
do.
I'd love to cover Lady Vengeance. Lady Vengeance, fantastic. But yes, 100%. If you want to see us cover Lady Vengeance and sympathy for Mr. Vengeance,
Uh-huh.
let us know.
Um, but yeah, so first impressions for you, Danny?
Yeah, really enjoyed it. I really, really
Good.
enjoyed it. I imagine, like yourself, there's probably a few things that we'll get into, obviously, that we maybe didn't like so much. But for the most part, I really enjoyed it, and it wasn't. I kind of had an idea of what it was about, but largely I hadn't read a lot about it, knew very little. So going into it with that was good. I thought it was really nice going into it with knowing very little about it. So my expectations were, it exceeded my
Hmm.
expectations and stuff. So
Yeah,
yeah,
I didn't read anything
enjoyed
about it
it.
other than that, I'd seen some screenshots and I know people have sort of raved about it for a few years. This was
Hmm.
actually released in 2009,
Yeah.
which, fuck me, it's over a decade ago.
Why had
Um,
we not watched it? I don't
I don't
understand why
know.
we hadn't. Neither of us
Bizarrely,
had got to
I
it
don't
yet.
understand, yeah, why it's
Yeah, and
taken this
again,
long.
people had said to me, you should check that. You like Old Boy, check out his other film and check that out. So I don't know why it took us so long. But
Hmm.
here we are.
Here we
We've
are.
watched it. We have enjoyed it, and we are ready to discuss.
Destiny has led us to this moment, Danny.
Exactly. This was meant to happen.
It's
This
all a
was meant to be
plan.
our season 6 finale just before Valentine's because there is a love element here. Every good vampire movie has a love element.
Yeah, it's quite a
Um,
lot of love elements in
a
this
whole
film.
a
It's
whole lot of
quite an
loving.
erotic film, let's just say that.
Oh, it's
Um,
some of the eroticism stuff was
yeah.
wild, wild. I
Wild
tell
horny
you.
boy.
Oh, Jesus, boys.
So yes, written and directed by Park Chan-wook, who we love. It's about a
We do.
Catholic priest who is attempting to help find a cure for this incurable disease that has
EV.
spread. Yeah, called EV. I believe it started in Africa. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, it seems
I
to kind of imply
It's
that,
kind of
and
spread to other parts of the
across
world.
Europe, and because I say was it like anyone who's had the treatment in Africa has survived, but so far no Caucasian Asian has
Hmm.
survived yet, and yeah, so
It seems to be males as well, so there's
mhm,
specific type of person that gets it and cannot survive. So he gets a disease in his body,
mhm.
um, and because he wants to try to help find a cure and try to understand the patients that he is seeing as part of his priesthood. But by making himself ill, he actually starts to turn into a vampire.
Was it the virus that he's injected with that turns him to a vampire, or was it the blood transfusion that turns him into a vampire? Because to become a vampire, you have to consume the vampire's blood. So
Well,
is
sorry,
that
yes,
blood?
yes.
Is that? As I was wondering, I was
That was
kind of
quite an
like,
important
is
part
it?
that I left out, yeah.
Come on, Gav, get on the ball.
Uh,
Which again is it's a vampire trope.
yes.
But I was kind of watching. I was like, is it that combination of the virus and a particular type of blood that turns you to a vampire, or is it, or was it just purely blood, the
So
transfused blood?
he he's got the virus, he's about to die. Other people have this virus as well.
Oh my
He's given this blood transfusion,
god!
and then eventually he, out of all the other people that have this virus, is the only person that
Was it
heals
50 and it gets
himself.
exaggerated to 500? And
Hmm.
yeah, I love that. I love that there's so many different kind of elements and stuff to this about religion and sensuality and hype as well, and conspiracy. There's so much to this film. I can't wait to talk about it. I'm really excited. Can you tell?
I can tell you're getting a wee bit
I can't.
erect. No.
I better get the cane out.
So it
We'll get into
stars
that.
Song Kang-ho, who we love as well,
Mhm,
and Kim Ok-bin.
mhm,
Song Kang-ho has obviously worked with Park Chan-wook before, and famously was in Parasite,
mhm.
and did the whole press tour around the Oscars, and so a lot of people know who he is now, and it's great to see him get the recognition that he deserves because he's a fucking amazing
So,
actor, and
yeah,
he's amazing in this. He's amazing in Parasite, obviously,
yeah.
but
Parasite's
this one,
fantastic.
you could sort of tell, God, this guy's good. Like, what I mean,
Hmm.
he's got some talent, like
Yeah. Oh, Jesus.
he's got the chips. So it
Hmm.
is loosely based or inspired by an 1867 novel by a French novelist. I think his name's Émile Zola. I don't know how
That
close.
sounds like a vampire. That sounds like the name
Yeah,
you would expect from a vampire.
I
Emile Zola. I'm
don't know
Emile
how close it
Zola,
is to the novel.
and I want to
Um,
suck your blood. I,
I know I'm quite interested to read the novel now,
yeah.
just
Hmm.
to see how close it is. But it was quite a small budget. It was about 5 million budget. It made around 13 million at the box office, which is, very good. Obviously,
Okay.
commercially successful, critically acclaimed. Everyone seems to sort of like it, enjoy it. It's all positive reviews, mostly.
Gav, I'm really glad you did the
Um,
numbers this week. You didn't do the numbers last week, and I was a wee bit sad
did we
about it.
not?
I don't think so. I don't remember
It's not
doing the
like me.
numbers. I don't. Well, not last week. Sorry, the week before. I don't remember
Previous
the
episode.
numbers. Whereas, I'm glad you did the numbers this week. I'm just saying. I know.
I don't
I
know. I
just.
must have been
I want to let you know
not
how
with it
important
last
it
week.
is to me that you provide us with the numbers.
It's important. You can't ever find those numbers unless you come here and get them from me. There's no way you could go online and find them.
IMDb,
I
what?
do I do intense research to get these numbers and to get all
I'm
these
just here to
facts.
talk
I
shit.
know. Danny's the color. So Also, fun fact, it was apparently the first mainstream Korean film to show a bit of male Willie.
Oh,
There you
it's
go.
you know what? To be fair, this film, I actually expected Willie sooner, and when the Willie didn't happen, I was like, right, well, there's going to be no
Where's
Willie,
the Willie?
and then the Willie did appear, and I was like,
It
oh,
did.
there's the Willie.
It was quite
So
late into the film when it
this is
appeared.
uh, this is the second movie this season where we get to talk about
Willies.
seeing Willie. Yeah, and
Ah,
actually, I think of all our seasons, this is the only season where we've got to see a bit of Willie in any of our movies.
more than once, or
Yeah, well,
just
20 a day, sure, we got to see some Willie,
we've
and
seen a
then yeah,
wee bit
we
of Irish Willie.
saw a bit Irish Willie, and now
Irish
we've
seen a
seen
wee
some
bit
Korean Willie.
Korean Willie, yeah.
So
Um,
we're gonna have a chart going forward, different Willie
well, we'll
nationalities
have
that
a
we've ever
ranking
seen.
system eventually. Top 10
Top 10
international
Willies.
Willies. So yeah, positive, mostly positive reviews. It did actually get nominated at Cannes for the Palme d'Or. It didn't win it. I can't remember what film won it that year, but it won the jury prize at Cannes that year, which is, very coveted prize. I think it's like the second or third best prize that you can get at Cannes.
Mhm.
So, Park Chan-wook originally wanted to make this a bit earlier in his career. He had worked on a film almost a decade before this called Joint Security Area, with Song Kang-ho was also in that, and that's when they first started talking about this film, started potentially putting ideas together to make this happen. So almost a decade in the making, and it finally happened in 2009. Um, I'm really glad it happened because it was one of those films that's kind of like when you read the blurb about, this guy turns into a vampire, um, he becomes vampiric. He has a vampire's
Thirst.
thirst.
He does indeed have a vampire's
He
thirst.
has vampirism, but he's
Hmm.
not a vampire as such. It's not
No.
it's not really a horror film for most of the film until we get near the end and it starts
Hmm.
kind of fucking hell. This is, there's quite a lot of gory images in this. But up until kind of this, I would say the last 15, 20 minutes maybe. There's blood in it, obviously, and there's things that happen, but it is very much a romantic love story about this
Hmm.
priest who also becomes enamored by this woman who is married to one of his childhood friends. So it's becomes a bit of a love triangle type thing,
Yeah.
which is, hmm, horrific in
Yeah.
of itself. The opening segment sort of starts with him going to see the patient. It sets it up nicely. We see that he's obviously a priest, Catholic priest. He's kind of uh, sitting at the bedside of this patient who's on the cusp of death. And the patient eventually goes in a coma, and we see him later on in the film.
Yeah. It's
But
whenever he like he cracks the flute out when he gets his
uh,
wee accordion out, and I or not accordion. What do you call it?
it's a flute. It's a
It's
like a tin whistle
recorder. It's a
recorder.
recorder.
That's
It's
it.
a
Fuck me.
proper like recorder. And I was just like, mate, fucking Mary had a little lamb. Go, go, go. And then the fucking fella goes into cardiac arrest. And I was like, oh shit, okay, well, no recorder session for us. But then we do get a recorder session later, but we'll get to
Do
that. But I'm really excited to talk about it because it fucking we'll get to it. So yes, the fella he's been at the bedside of asked him to go get his recorder, and as he goes to get it, the fella goes into cardiac arrest, and then he's like, right,
I need
I
to
need to
find out how to
find
cure
a
these
cure.
guys.
Yeah, I need. He knows of a treatment center where they're trying to get a cure. So he goes to speak to an elder priest father who's blind, to
Of course, yes.
basically try and ask the Vatican if they will give permission for him to go and be a part of these trials. And basically the elder father's like, nah, just be there for your patients.
Uh, yeah, yeah. It's like just do your job basically.
Yeah.
But he does end up going. He calls it a vacation to Africa.
Yes. He goes to fake. Yeah. Yes.
And he speaks to a doctor who kind of fills him in the disease and what it does to you, and it
Mhm.
sounds fucking brutal.
I love that guy. I loved the way he was just like talking about the disease and the treatments and stuff. But he's got that kind of like French tinge to what he was saying.
Yeah,
And I just like if the film had just been about him conducting the experiments, I would have been happy with that too. I thought he was a great wee character, which again only really shows up for 5 to 10 minutes.
yeah. He's only in
Um,
that scene. I think he's in the scene later on as well.
mhm.
Um, can't remember the scene later on, but he is in it, and it's a very brief scene.
Yep.
But the infection is pretty brutal. They go into detail about what the
Blistering
symptoms are
and
first, and then what physically and what happens to you basically.
orifice
Uh,
bleeding,
yeah, it's brutal.
all that lovely stuff. But aye, as that's kind of as it, so we get kind of pictures and videos that the doctor's showing to him, and then we have cutaways between him writing a letter where he's talking to his patients about this wonderful vacation he's on, and that's juxtaposed by what we're actually seeing, which
Mm,
is he's in like a really drab sort of, would you even call it a hospital? It's
medical center
just
of some
yeah,
kind.
like just concrete medical center.
Yeah.
There's centipedes climbing the walls and stuff. But you have that bit where you get that the prayer where he said where it's like um make me like the leper and my limbs fall off
Mm,
and pull out my
take away
nails.
my cheeks so my tears don't run down
Yeah,
my
don't
face and all.
roll down them and all. Like what a
I know.
like it's
I think that's when I
I found
knew
it
that
sinister.
it was going to be a good film when he had that
Mm-hmm.
narration and he was saying those lines and I was like,
Yeah.
this is going to be quite poetic and it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
done really well.
And it does a lot of that. But the moment then, whenever he's having a wee toot on the recorder, and I was like, "Here we go, recorder tunes," and it's quite nice. It's a really nice wee tune he's
Yeah,
playing. But then he fucking books blood into it, and the
that's right.
fucking blood
Yeah,
spurting out the holes and all down his out his nose and out his fingers. And I was like, "Fuck!" Like this is
yeah,
going to be wild. Like the moment that happened, the moment I seen blood spurt from a recorder, I was like, "We're in for a good time."
yeah. That happens quite a bit in this film where the
There's a lot of
blood sort
blood,
of comes out of nowhere.
spurty blood, yeah.
Yeah,
But that bit in particular, like that's an image I shan't forget. And all the way close-ups of his fingers, like
yeah.
trembling on the recorder and the blood coming out. Blah, blah, blah.
I think they've set it up really well. He's obviously in the beginning. He's a great priest. He's passionate
He's
and
genuine.
he's dedicated his life to the priesthood, and
Hmm.
he's very good at his job, trusting father that you wish that all priests would be like.
Yeah,
But
but
his character clearly physically turns very shortly into the film.
yeah,
But
it's
also characteristics of his ideals change completely.
yeah. I really
Um,
like. There's that moment of doubt before he goes uh to be a part of the vaccine trials, where he's in the confession with a nun or not a nun with one of the
yeah,
sister nurses who's considering suicide, and he
yes,
says to her, that's the ultimate sin.
that's
You
worse than
can't even
murder.
consider it. Yeah, it's worse than murder. Trust in God, do your Hail Marys, have a cold shower, and trust in God's work in science and get some antidepressants. And I was like, what a like that seems even now like still quite a hot take for a man of the cloth to say.
Faith.
Which I was like, is that going to be like, is he doing that because he works in a hospital, or is he doing that because there is that degree of well, he puts his faith in science, and that's why he wants to go and trial these vaccines. And there's a bit of himself comes out in that moment. And then he says, forget about this bastard that's, dumped you. And she's like, let me worry about the bastards and you. And I was like, this is a
Mm,
fucking another just really lovely moment that is so small with it. It's such a short, small scene within the movie, but says so much about
uh,
what's to come. It was a
yeah,
great scene.
I think it's. I don't think. Well, maybe it is to cast a wee bit of doubt over his beliefs and his faith and stuff, but I think it's okay to be a man of faith and also still believe in medicine.
I
You
think
know,
that
uh,
that's what you want.
you
Ideally,
know,
that is what you want. But
like I don't think priests believe that medicine doesn't work. I don't.
don't be touching paracetamol and holy
I don't.
water.
They
That's
don't.
all you need.
That's not. It's you don't have to
No,
be a man of faith or a man of science. You
no.
know. So I do think that you can be a bit of both
Mhm.
when it comes, especially when it comes to actual medicine that helps you. Um, when we think about the likes of evolution and that thing, maybe they have different beliefs in that. Well, they definitely do.
Mhm.
But anyway, so yes, it's interesting that you caught that because I actually caught it as well. I loved that confessional scene.
Mhm.
That kind of made me laugh actually because he got quite angry, didn't he? He was sort of
Mhm.
like
He gets
it
real
was almost like he was
frustrated.
angry at himself
Mhm.
that he has his own. You can tell obviously he's got his own demons going on. There's something there. He's yearning for something else,
Hmm.
which obviously kind of takes over later on in the film. But he does get the blood transfusion when they think that he's dead, where he's
Hmm.
about to die. They give him the blood transfusion, and they call it. They say he's dead, and they put him under the sheet, and then he starts
He's
sort of
saying the
moving and
prayer.
stuff, and
He
it's
does.
like he does the prayer. That's
He
right. He
does the
starts
prayer. He
praying.
starts
Yeah.
doing the mantra again. I am a leper. Let me. And again, not even just hearing it again with
Mm.
him below the sheet. I thought that was fantastic. And there's, I think there's something really interesting in that moment. It's a religious thing and comes across almost like a resurrection. Because immediately after that, we get the whole, 6 months later,
Uh-huh.
and he's being treated like a religious figure. He's a healer. He's a saintly figure. People are camping outside the hospital just to get his attention to cure their loved ones. But I was like, is this kind of like a resurrection? Religious resurrection. And then later in the film, we can obviously delve into this a bit more, but we get this idea of rebirth as well. With the whole birthday thing, and I was just
Hmm.
like, oh, this is
That
yeah,
was nice. That
real
was
good,
nice.
real good. Hmm.
Yeah, I think it's definitely supposed to, sort of suggest some sort of resurrection. Um, because the same thing happened with Christ, obviously, when he was resurrected. But I like that they focused on whenever after 6 months, and he's still wearing bandages and all that sort of stuff.
Hmm.
But
Darkman vibes.
yeah, well,
Darkman
it was
vibes.
getting Darkman vibes. I was also getting the fact that okay, he's becoming vampiric. So he has to kind of cover his skin, but he's still got this disease because it's too early for him to realize that he becomes healed when he consumes human blood, which he finds out very soon, shortly after this. But because that's when his lust for blood
What
takes
what a
over
great
when he goes back in to see the coma patient.
the moment whenever no, it's before that. It's the car crash victim, and he gets the blood in his hand, and he does that wee quick lick. He does a wee
Oh yeah, that's right. I completely
fucking
forgot
when
about
he's
that.
praying for it, and he just a wee quick lick on his thumb. I was like,
Uh,
that's such a dirty. And
Also, there's a wild lot of licking in this film. Did you
there's
get that?
licking and sucking and just fucking going for it.
Bucking and
Fucking and just also the bit whenever they're fucking he's sucking her feet and
I
she's sucking his
know.
hands. I was like,
Fuck me. And that's proper,
no,
like, he's proper
they're
going for it.
they
Like,
were going for it. Yeah, yeah. That I was like, oh, okay, it's this kind of
that'll
film,
be,
huh?
they will remain close friends for the rest of their
Oh,
lives.
but yeah, even before, I love whenever. So yes, we kind of said he comes out of the hospital. He's all bandaged. He's still kind of figuring out what's going on with himself whilst trying to do right by the patients. But rumors gone about, he's one of the only survivors of this vaccine trial, and he's going to cure everybody.
Pardon me.
So people are camping outside the hospital to try and get attention, cure their loved ones, and he's in doing magic tricks for the children's ward,
Mm,
and a woman appears at the window and is like, my son has cancer, I need you to come and cure my son. And it turns out that the son of this woman is a childhood friend that he
hmm.
used to go and have dinner at the house of when he was younger, because he used to live in an orphanage, which again I assume is part of where the blind father is, must be an orphanage or attached to the hospital in some way. um and yeah, so when he goes round, he goes to visit the son in hospital and realizes they all kind of come to realize, oh, we know each other from way back, and we get to then meet the love interest as well. And she's being all coy and shy, and they're kind of giving her a hard time about running around in her bare feet as a child and how they used to try and get father to touch her calluses and stuff.
Mm,
And it's just a bit wild, but then he does end up curing his cancer, or it's implied
does,
that
yeah.
he's cured his cancer. He's managed to get rid of it. They've gone in to check it, and it's just disappeared.
Yeah, is it throat cancer or something?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because then
Um,
he's got a cold for pretty much the rest of the
yeah,
film. Then
he
after that,
obviously his immune system is non-existent,
yeah,
but he's got some sort of throat cancer, and then he says that he it's now disappeared. He went for biopsies and blah blah blah,
yeah,
and so it works. So he has some sort of healing abilities. Now, whether it was him or not, we don't know, but that kind of turns a switch in his head essentially to like,
Mhm.
well, actually maybe something is going on here.
There's
So
something here, but it's the bit whenever so he ends up kind of becoming friendly with the family, then it's invited over for mahjong. Is that what we call the game?
Mahjong, yes.
Mahjong, and he it's the bit whenever he first realizes that we get it revealed to us as the audience that the smell of blood is turning. Well, he thinks it's turning him, but it's actually him lusting for it, craving
Mm.
for it, and she runs off to the bathroom to put a sanitary
Yeah, to
pad
put like
on,
a pad
and I
on, yeah.
was just like, oh, oh.
I know.
I
Oh, they
was
went there. They
what a way to
actually went
reveal
there.
what a way to reveal you know
Yes.
that there. And again, it's sort of one of those things where it's kind of like that it it, this kind of moment where you're kind of like, right, well, he obviously has a desire for blood, but she's obviously a sexually active woman and all this here sort of stuff. And yeah, just from there it starts to fucking
Yeah, and they
spiral.
did it pretty subtly. Like, it wasn't like
Yeah,
they showed her cleaning herself
no,
or anything like that. It was,
she just went into the bathroom and
yeah,
grabbed the pads,
it
yeah,
was quite
and
subtle, but I like that they used menstruation as the first time that he kind of becomes
as a
aware of blood.
trigger. Hmm.
Um, because this film is as much about him lusting for blood as it is, well, more so probably lusting for sex,
Yeah.
which is obviously completely against his code as a priest,
Hmm.
which is almost kind of what the film is almost
Yeah.
about, more so than the actual vampire side of things.
Yeah, because that's it. I mean, was it's basically straight after that kind of initial him being with the family, he's at he's at his own sort of wee room, and we have the sound of sex of of a woman in the throes of passion. Just the sound of that, but then him sitting on the edge of the bed, butt naked.
Did you think he was having a wank?
And well, that's at first I was kind of like,
Because you heard like,
is he gonna bust one out?
but
And
he was hitting
then
himself, so I thought he was like he had an erection, and he was
yeah,
like,
I thought he was
and I was
smacking the
like,
erection,
mate,
but then you
come
start to
on.
see the welt in the legs. But yeah, I thought exactly the same. I was like, he's smacking his todger. Don't be smacking your todger.
Yeah, but
um,
I mean, obviously that's sort of kind of like, whipping, monks whip themselves whenever they have
uh,
impure thoughts. So it's
mhm,
kind of that idea.
yeah.
Um, but again, also I thought that was also a hint that, he smelt the blood.
Hmm.
And it was also a hint that he can his hearing, he could hear better.
Yeah,
So I
he'd
loved
hear.
how
Well, that's it. Because sure, we get that. I was going to say the hearing scene whenever he does, he kind of his vampire powers start to really kick in. He hears all the stuff, and we get all those really quick cuts of like different
uh
stuff that he's hearing. And he actually, somebody is having a wank. He hears somebody having
yeah,
a wank in the middle of it all, and a cat
smoking a cigarette
meowing,
and
and a
all.
cigar being smoked. I love that edit when it like
Mm,
cuts in and it's the cigar burns the scene away.
beautiful, yeah, it's beautiful.
And the rustle on the leaves, and yeah, what a great way. Again, it's been done before, but it was a great way and great cuts to show all these different sounds that you could hear with the flashes of red then over his face. Yeah, another great way to introduce like a vampire power that we're all kind of aware of. We all know vampires can hear like most minute sound,
Hmm.
but it's just a really fun way to show us.
Yeah, they're like human bats. I mean,
Mhm.
this film, the original script was called The Bat. The Korean, I can't remember what the Korean version of it was, but and I actually love that, sort of maybe going a wee bit forward here a wee bit, but I got the Matrix vibes from this quite a
Did
bit.
you?
Yeah, towards the second half when he starts to kind of like use his powers, or he like he jumps into the air and he sort of glides, and he's
Yeah,
got that Neo big long trench coat,
I get that.
which
Yeah,
whenever he jumps into there is a scene I think when he jumps and it kind of goes out like that, like a bat's wings almost like, and I thought that was really nice.
yeah. Mhm.
I loved all the sort of gliding scenes. I just thought it was
Yeah.
really well done, and
It's when the two of them were kind of chasing each other across the rooftops. That was, yeah,
it's it's really
you
well
really
done,
got to
and
appreciate it then.
I think it
I get something we've seen before in
yeah.
loads of vampire movies, but I think just kind of nice to see it
Well,
done this way.
the scene I really loved the scene where she talks about, oh, I'd love to before she gets turned, and she talks about, she obviously knows that he's got these skills. I got
Mm.
skills. So
That
she's
skills.
talking about, freedom of, because she has demons. Her marriage, she's unhappy in her marriage, and she doesn't want to be married to this other guy. Um, and she tries to escape, and this is why she pretends that she sleepwalks because
Mm.
she wants to get out of the house at night and she wants to escape and all this stuff. She's got her own demons, but she wants to be free and she wants to be able to fly essentially. So he takes her in his arms, and there's that lovely scene where the camera's kind of on her face, just kind of quite close up, and you see him jumping from rooftop to rooftop, and it reminded me a little bit of the Superman scene
Mm.
where from Richard Donner's Superman, where Superman, not Clark Kent, but takes um,
Lois
Lois
Lane
Lane,
for a wee
fuck me, I
flight.
forgot her surname there,
Mhm.
for the first time
Mm.
in space, flying, like, and it's that every sort of kind of, that's quite an iconic scene, and lots of films try to replicate that moment because it's the moment whenever the connection between the two characters becomes real and becomes more than just physical, and it's very much love at that point, I think. So,
Yeah,
but those scenes were great. But I just wanted to mention the
fantastic.
fact that it reminded me of the Matrix because there's a few scenes
Yeah,
where they kind of jump up and you can see that they're on sort of wires or whatever, but you know, uh,
it's just a
it's just well done.
nice, almost like it's like they're almost swimming up through
Yeah,
the air,
they're
like
like
just a real
floating.
nice sort of dive up.
Yeah,
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. Just talking about her and her demons and stuff. I love that scene whenever the husband's lying in bed and he's snoring his head off, and she's
the
got the
knife
sewing scissors. She's got the wee pair of
or
sewing
the blade.
scissors,
The blades.
and
Yeah.
she's just putting them in his mouth, but not enough to touch him. But she's just jabbing them, and it's the music is really tense, but then it sort of just drags off as she just keeps doing it and keeps doing it, and then the scene fades out with her just repeatedly
Mm.
dipping them into the mouth just enough that it's not actually touching. And again, I just loved because the tension it tries to build up for no payoff is wonderful because she's not ultimately she doesn't have the strength then to do it. But later on, obviously, those
She doesn't have
same
this. She doesn't have the strength to do it, but she ends up kind of manipulating.
yeah.
Um,
I love that as well though, like they're implied as a murder weapon then, but then they become the tools of her craft whenever she's turned. And again, something else I was like, oh my god, they don't have fangs. As vampires, they don't have fangs. Now he does bite her at one point in the midst of lovemaking and leaves like a bite mark on her shoulder. But again, it's just like a human, a man bite mark. Um, but she uses those same like wee thread scissors to stab people in the neck, and it's two puncture wounds.
mm,
And I really like that. I was like, it's she hasn't got fangs, but she's still inflicting that typical vampire wound
Mark.
that you would expect to see. Yeah, it's the two puncture wounds so that she can then drink the blood. I was like, that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean the fangs. Obviously, we haven't really sort of mentioned the the fact that they don't have fangs, but it's not a traditional. We have said that it's not a traditional vampire story. They're not traditional vampires. He can go out during the day, but there is, I assume it's the more blood that he takes, the more that he heals. He can't be exposed to sunlight.
Mhm.
And there's a scene where he's lying, and you see the sun coming in, and you see the
And
steam rising
steam
from
coming
his
off his
back.
back.
It's just
Yeah.
lovely, and I love kind of the subtle moments that they put in this, and it's kind of not, it's not really, it's not like they're throwing it in your face.
Mhm.
But if you know a vampire, then you see these parts of the story coming together. So we mentioned that she's unhappy. Her husband has cancer. Or he had cancer. It was a childhood friend of the main characters, and the
She's
lo
basically made to marry the son because her parents abandon her with that family. They take
yeah,
her in, and then she ends up marrying the son, which is why
she's
she's so
kind of
unhappy. She's
she's
not a
she's
slave,
no,
but
but she was
she's
sort of like a sister
yeah.
to the guy, which was a bit strange. She calls her mother-in-law mum
Mm.
first. Well, she calls her mother. No, she still calls her mum actually in the
Yeah,
end.
and was it whenever she's introduced to us, she's like, "Oh, she went from being my daughter to my daughter-in-law,"
Yeah,
and you're
I
a bit
know.
like, mm,
I was like, what's going on here? And then explains it really quickly. But yeah, she's basically she was taken in as a child and raised, so I suppose she feels like she has to stay there now, and she married the son as
She's
a kind of
promised she's
as
going
a
to
thank
get
you,
the
basically.
yeah, and she's promised she's going to get the dressmaking shop. But again, you're kind of like, would she though? You
I
know,
know.
it's the way the ma treats her. You know, she's really nasty to
I
her.
really
And
love I really love the actress
replace
because
the mum
plays the
or
no that plays well.
well, both of
We'll
them.
we'll talk about the mother in a minute,
Yeah,
but the Taiju, I think her name, isn't it?
yeah,
She's amazing because at the start her hair's kind of all everywhere. You don't see her face that well. It's kind of covered, and she's busy doing housework, and she clearly is unhappy. Like she's visibly angry, and as the story progresses, as she comes around to the priest, the father, she shows more of her face and stuff, and she becomes a little bit more feminine and
oh my
all that
god.
sort of stuff. And
The moment when she goes, "I'm not shy,"
yeah,
and we see the ditties.
of
But
course,
like that's it.
the
Like we
first
get
of
that.
many. No, well, I
Yes,
suppose.
well, but it's the first moment where again, like you say, she's kind of the hair's covering the face. She's dressed in real baggy clothes.
Mm,
But that moment when she kind of both physically exposes herself, but also mentally, emotionally exposes herself to him, like it's everything is that out, you
mm.
know. And then obviously he kind of has a moment where he's like, I
Well,
no, but
she obviously feels liberated in that
mhm.
moment. She's allowed to take her clothes off with another man and somebody who she's obviously clearly attracted to. But it was a wee bit rapey from her point of view,
Yeah,
because
he's kind of like not, and like he closes his legs up, and she pretty
yeah,
much just like
that's
prices them
that's the
open.
that's the bit that got me. Because obviously he's a priest, so we're assuming that he's never had sex before,
Mhm.
or it's been a long time since he's ever been with a woman or had any sort of sexual encounter, and it's really awkward. And I love that they went down that route and didn't go with the whole "oh, this is amazing," because it actually kind of looked awkward on screen, and I think
Yeah.
it worked well because even the way she's sitting on him, she sort of turns around, and then his trousers is at his ankles, and then that's when she prizes his legs open, but she's sitting in the 69 position, and it's
Mhm.
weird. It's just a really
Yeah.
bizarre rapey scene.
It's even before that, like the scene is set up to be awkward from the kind of get go with it. Whenever he's kind of coming on to her and he's like, I've never kissed a woman before
Yeah,
until now, but he doesn't kiss her properly, like glances her cheek
yeah,
with a kiss, but then she pulls him in for a proper kiss then. And she then has to kind of take the lead, and that's her, you know, it's awkward because he doesn't know what he's doing. He has his doubt, you know, in that moment. And then just as they're about to get into it, and he
I
looks
know.
like he's starting to get into it, the mash shouts for her. And
Also,
it's
so
just
let's
ruins the
talk about
moment.
the Ma is amazing,
She's fantastic, yeah.
but let's talk about what she's called, Mrs. Ra.
Mrs. Ra. That's right. Mrs. Ra.
Mrs. Ra. I
Oh,
fucking
Mrs.
pissed
Ra.
myself. I was like, oh,
That's
fucking
right.
hell.
I was like, when they were
Check on her
saying, they were
beds.
like, oh, Mrs. Ra.
Classic. No, she's fucking fantastic. So really overbearing mother, loving mother. Obviously has done a lot for her children.
Loving
Owns a
mother to her
her
son.
successful business. Well, I think she loves the
Loving,
girl as
she
well.
does, but she's wild, just bad to
Traditional,
her.
like
It's
sort
a
of traditional ways.
bad egg.
The woman kind of looks after the husband. There's that scene where she slaps her because she hasn't got his hot water bottle ready.
Yeah.
Um,
But she's drunk at that. But that's the thing. She's kind of, when she's
she
sober,
loves to drink.
she's agreeable enough. You know, she lets her go volunteer at the hospital and stuff, and she's dead on to her. But when she's the drink in her, she's a bad bitch.
Aye.
She's a wild bad one.
Uh, but she's great and sort of typical character at the start, and then whenever the son dies, um,
Oh,
she turns into a zombie
she
basically.
goes catatonic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
It's
she does a
whenever,
lot with her eyes in that. That second
yeah.
half of the
Oh,
film.
those moments are great. The bit when she's scratching the letters out, and her nails coming away and all.
Hmm.
But it's even the moment whenever father first arrives at the house after the death of the son, and he's all wet, and she thinks He's the son and
I
he's
know,
screaming and getting on, and how could you do this to us, you bastard?
I
And all.
know.
I was like, fucking hell, like
So
the
we have
raw
to,
emotion there. Like,
yeah, we have to say that,
well, we should probably say what happened.
the priest and Taiju fall in love, and
Do a wild lot of writing.
they do a lot of writing,
Do a wild lot of writing.
and Taiju basically manipulates the priest into thinking that her husband beats her. But actually, it's her that's inflicting
She's
this.
been stabbing herself with those wee
Yeah,
scissors
exactly. And
the whole
so
time.
the priest is then sort of angry, but they also decide that, oh, they could use him as blood and blah blah blah. They end up deciding that they're going to kill him, and they go out in a boat fishing. She wants him to not to basically to drown him, and
Yeah,
then
it's
to
set up earlier in the film that
yeah.
the during the mahjong game, one of the people that comes to play with them is like head of security at a dam, and
Mhm.
he's able to let them go out fishing on the dam even though it's illegal, but they have to do it under the cover of night. So that's sort
Mm.
of set up quite early on in the film. So then they go out in the wee fishing boat, and isn't it great? And they're regaling stories, but then
Eventually, they
takes a
push him
dark
over.
turn.
It takes a dark turn. They push him over. But there is a wee bit
Oh,
of
oh, but
there's a period there where we're not certain if he's dead or
no,
not.
that's true.
So
But
I was thinking, is he dead, or have they, are they keeping him alive or what? But I really liked that they played with that.
it's like, is it manifestation of her guilt or is it
Mm.
real? But the bit that got me, when the Keith, the husband and father, fall off the boat, but he's still holding the fishing rod, and the line
Oh,
pulls
fuck
across,
me.
and the hook gets caught in her ear,
Yes,
and rips out. Oh, oh.
I know. That's fucking
Hmm.
stinking, mate.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, it was really well shot as well.
It's a bit flying across in the
Yeah.
air and then embedding in the air. Aye, great, great moment
So I can't
in the
remember her
close up of it
husband.
tugging until
Yeah, I can't remember her husband's name, but he's dead
he
essentially.
dies. Yeah,
And
it's a
you
bit
know,
American Werewolf in London. The way he appears,
yeah,
he's like lying on. He's doing the thing because they have a waterbed, and earlier
mhm,
in the film we see him like bouncing away in the waterbed, but when we see him later on, and he's in the drenched clothing, and he's got a rock on his chest.
mhm,
So father has held him down in the water of the
yeah,
dam with a rock. But we see that, and I was like,
uh,
that's American Werewolf in London esque.
yeah, it definitely is. And
From that.
his sort of facial expression, because his nose is dripping,
Oh, he's got the
and he's
snorters,
always
which
smiling.
again is in the film early. Yeah, he's just a happy-go-lucky idiot. That's pretty much how he's set
Mm,
up as a character, but he still maintains that in his ghoulie form.
yeah, and it's really creepy. And this is whenever the sort of horror elements start taking over, because we get the illusion that she's seeing these visions of him, and there's that moment. Well, we'll fast forward a little bit, but there's a moment where there's a wee bit of bucking going on,
Mm-hmm.
and he's there. He's
Yeah.
sort of sandwiched in between them both.
Mm-hmm.
But this is happens just after where she starts, you know, seeing him obviously at the bed, and there's water dripping from the ceiling and all that. And I really loved how they did that because they made
Oh,
they
the
made me think,
damp.
hang on, what the fuck's going on here?
Mm-hmm.
Is this real or is he actually in the house?
Yeah, and that's I was kind of like, is there guilt? Is it because her mind's melding with the turning, and or is it, is he still kind of lingering about? Is he maybe some weird vampiric undead
Mm,
creature now as well? But yeah, I really enjoyed whenever he made his appearances and stuff. And there's that scene whenever they everything's kind of going to shit, and you're like, is she tripping balls and seeing all this? But then he grabs her by the throat. Father grabs her by the throat in that
uh,
moment, and you're like, right, well, shit is kind of getting real now.
would you say that they have a toxic relationship?
Oh, 100%.
There's a
hundred
while of
percent.
abuse in this
Yeah.
from both sides, both male and female people kind of abuse their partners
Yeah.
in a weird way because
She mentally abuses him, just or not she manipulates him, which we've already kind of talked about.
uh,
Manipulates him into murdering the husband. But then even in the moment whenever before he murders the husband, he like swoops into the bedroom in the dead of night, and she's just finished cutting her legs,
hmm,
and he's like, did he do this to you?
Yeah,
I'll get him. And she goes to stop him, and he grabs her by the throat and holds her
that's
up
when
in
he
the air.
first, I think,
Then,
first
and
grabs her.
that's
Yeah.
the first, yeah, that's the first kind of moment of violence against her. And again, in that moment, there's a wee she has a look on her face that is fear, but then almost like an arousal, and
Mm.
then fear again. Like you see this wee twitch in her face, and it's so subtle. But again, I was like, what the fuck? And there's even slightly before that, I think it's after one of their booking sessions, she's like, am I a pervert? You know,
Mm.
because of all the stuff that we're doing. I mean, like we said earlier, they're sucking toes, they're sucking hands, they're biting each other, they're really
Well,
going for it. Like,
he likes pain. She's a wee bit
yeah.
of a sado that way.
Hmm.
Not extreme pain, but she
Hmm.
likes when he's biting her, and because it makes her feel more alive, it makes her feel free. She's
Hmm.
probably been stuck in this marriage for years, and she's never really had any sort of feelings come
Hmm.
out before. So that's established at the beginning of the relationship, and then
Hmm.
as it progresses, particularly whenever she turns, she asks him, can I become a vampire too? And and it does happen, but
Hmm. It
that's when
is.
that's when you start to see her sort of becoming a wee bit more evil, and
Yeah.
maybe
Oh,
it's not just something to do with her own sort of sadomasochist ways, but she actually maybe has an evil bone in her.
first of all, the first kind of person that he starts supping from, taking wee sips from,
Hmm.
is the blood of the coma patient. So he doesn't really have permission there, but he's like, this fella is in a coma. It's not doing him any good anyway. Might as well have a wee sip sip. Um, and then he starts telling other patients that he can help save them if they're willing to let him drink their blood. And one of the patients actually says to him, I feel like I will live on because there's a part of me in you.
Hmm.
Which again, I was like, that's a really interesting concept of, you know, lasting legacy through a holy figure. And then also the older blind father is letting him drink of his blood, but in hopes that he will make him a vampire and return him his sight, give him
Hmm.
his sight back, because that's ultimately what he wants. He wants to see the sunlight again. But he explains to him, you won't be able to see the sunlight again because if you become a vampire, you won't be able to go out in the sun. He's like, well, that doesn't matter, even if it means seeing the moon, the stars, a firefly. But he doesn't turn into a vampire. He doesn't want to turn people into
He
vampires
doesn't
because
want
he
to
sees
kill
that as a
people.
curse. Yeah, he doesn't want to kill people. And again, you can tell he sees vampirism as a pestilence, a
Hmm.
sin. But in the moment, she wants to be turned to a vampire because we assume it's because she loves him, but she also then, in her thirst, gives birth to her evil. Uh, or brings it to the fore. I think in that moment as well. I love the lead up to her becoming a vampire is them talking about the mother is sitting catatonic, and they're kind of like feeding her. They've been feeding her the whole time
Mm.
and looking after her and all, but then they're sort of like hugging and smooching, and she's like, I don't even know when my birthday is. And then and shit kind of hits the fan. It gets all a bit weird, and the dead son's there in schooly form, and he ends up choking her out and breaking her neck. But then in that moment decides to bring her back to life, to bring her back and make her a vampire. And when she comes to, he embraces her and says, Happy birthday. And I
Hmm.
was like, oh, what a fucking way to tie that together. Fucking point to
Yeah,
point. Perfect. Just, yeah,
it was really well
wonderful.
done. Yeah. I like how he tries to cut himself, but he keeps healing before he
Yeah.
can give her any blood.
And almost when he cuts himself, it's almost like somebody cutting into like concrete. Like his wrist is
Mm.
almost like concrete in that moment too, and he's got to like proper like force the wound into her mouth so that she can like suck on it.
Yeah. So we've established that it's the vampirism's kind of uh allegory for like, lustful desires, carnal desires, forbidden lust,
Murderous desires.
murderous as well, the sort of kind of split personality type thing that comes out of her.
Hmm.
and a lack of faith in him as well. But what would you say out of everything we spoke about, all the scenes there, or if we've some scenes that we haven't spoken about, what's the scenes that jumped out at you?
The definitely the recorder, him poking blood down that recorder was a moment that, yeah, just really set it all off for me. I was enjoying it up until that point, but that was a moment I was like, we're on to
Yeah,
something here. Like, this is going to be great. I really like whenever the mother. I love the tension that's built up whenever the mother is catatonic for a bit, but she starts to kind of come out of that, but she can't give the game up because she
mm,
knows that they've killed her son and will likely kill her. So she plays catatonic, and she starts trying to give signals through like eye blinks. But then they notice she's also been scratching the letters to say
yeah,
killed. And that the tension that's built up in that, because they're finding it funny, and the father and your woman are playing along with it, but you're also like, they're shitting, like they're starting to twig on that she's trying to send messages here.
yeah. I think they could have stopped it earlier, but they
And
didn't
then,
realize how
yeah.
close they were. They didn't realize that she was actually spelling out words.
And that the tension that's built up in that moment, and then the moment when the three mahjong partners players catch on and they go to like leave, there's breakdowns and tears, and then they go to leave, and it's the former police chief turned dam security officer goes to leave first, and she just fucking open palm breaks his
Yeah.
neck, like straight to the face, head flies back. And that moment his head just goes,
Hmm.
I was like, fuck. Like, it's such a snappy moment. And I love that. And I love whenever then she's sort of toying about with the other fella, and real cat and mouse, making a game of it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I thought that
See,
was fantastic.
see, just before that, whenever they sort of catch on, there's a moment before she becomes violent.
Mhm.
And well, actually, even before we get there, I want to say one thing as well. They've painted the house.
White.
So they've completely transformed the
All
house
white.
white. So that kind of reifies the fact that they have fully transformed now as well, because the house was it was like a brownie color, wasn't it? It was all kind of
Yeah, it was all just
dark mahogany type, wasn't
dark
it?
mahogany colors. Aye, and then they want to paint it white to be like
So
sunlight.
they paint it white so that they have the light. But I think it's also that kind of thing that we have now fully transformed.
Mhm,
Well, it's her that wants to do it, and he does it because he loves her. But
mhm,
before she does that to your man, the priest walks out of the room
mhm,
and just casually as anything just starts closing blinds, and you're like, "Fuck, here we go."
yep.
So, he closes doors, he goes and closes all the blinds. He doesn't say a word. He does it really, really slowly, and then she starts walking around the room, closing the blinds and the curtains and stuff as well before she gets violent. And I really love that
Yep.
because shit's going to kick off.
Again, tension, just the tension build up to that's a physical snap of a neck. Wonderful. Truly, truly
I
wonderful.
know. One of my favorite scenes. I just thought I love the threesome bit where your man was like a fucking sandwich between the two. I just thought it was funny. And also I will say there is a decent amount of comedy in this. Like
Hmm. Oh
it's
yeah.
it's quite gory. It's quite brutal. It gets quite violent towards the end. But tonally, it is a wee bit all over the place, and that was kind of one of the negative things I will say about it. It's I'm not sure. And maybe I wanted to be this. Maybe I wanted to have all those elements, but
Hmm.
it is a wee bit kind of all over the place tonally, I think, at
Yeah.
times.
Well,
It
I
gets
get
more
I
serious
get that.
towards the end,
Mhm.
but there's certain scenes that I wasn't sure how to take it, and it made me think, is it because of the way it's filmed, or is it just maybe it was just me, but I'm not sure. But what do you
Yeah.
think about that? This
There's
sort of
yeah, there's times where I thought that even the way it was kind of shot, there was a bit more kind of like whimsy, and I don't know, I was getting like lots of Frenchy influences
mm,
in there too. And it was actually more in the third act that you say when it starts to get a bit more serious that I felt it dragged on a wee bit. I felt like that last kind of act
That's what I've
sort of,
written too.
yeah, it sort of it dragged its heels a wee bit, and I was like, okay, I get where we're going to now. If we could just get there. But I mean, overall, and I really enjoyed the end. I really enjoyed the end of the film, which is they go off, they drive off to a cliff, and they're both still kind of arguing and fighting, but they sit on the back of the car, and she pulls out she pulls out the pair of shoes that he gave her earlier. She'd been out walking barefoot, doing one of her sleepwalks, and he flies down to her and picks her, lifts her up, lifts her up
Mm.
into the air. I love that as well. I love that it's just a medium shot of from the knee down, and he's just picked her up. So you see her wee
Mm.
feet raise up, and he kicks off his own shoes and then sits her down into them. I loved that shot. I loved the simplicity of it, and just the way it acted out. And then he just
It's really
backs away from
delicate
her. It's so
the
delicate.
way
It's
it does
such
it.
a
Yeah.
lovely love. And again, like you said, with the flying scene where you've got that intimacy of her face taking in that flight and loving it and being the rush of it for her. That's another lovely, delicate moment between the two characters. And I love then that at the end of the film, we get that knees down shot of them sitting atop the boot of the car, and then it pans down a bit to just the ground with the bumper of the car, and one shoe falls with all the ash in it,
Mm.
and then the other shoe falls with all the ash in it, and I was like that. Considering I was starting to flag a bit towards the end because I felt it was dragging on. It took me back in then,
Mm.
and I really, really loved that ending.
It was a nice ending because in the end he commits suicide,
They both
which
do,
is
yeah. They
yeah,
both,
she did want to though. She tried really hard to not.
yeah,
There
of
was a
course.
whole 5-10 minutes there where she was trying to get into the boot of the car, and then she tried to go underneath the car, and he was having none of it. So, and eventually she came around and was like, "Oh, actually, this is the only way out." And she throughout the whole film she was trying to escape her life, and this was
Mhm.
the only way that she could escape this. So was
Let's talk
by
about one of the fucking funniest moments in it. Whenever they're jumping, when they kind of have their wee roof chase, like she's physically trying to get away from him, and then he has her hanging from the roof upside down, and she's like, "It's over between us. I don't want this to go on anymore." So he drops her, and then
Mhm.
she's sitting there, and she's like, "I dump him, and he physically drops me like
Yeah,
this." I
I
fucking
know.
that killed me. That killed me. But then he comes down to her then in the alley, and is like, "We are the only two. Like I can't be without you. We're dead together." That
There,
kind of moment.
yeah, there's another vampire film called Only Lovers Left Alive,
Mm.
directed by Jim Jarmusch, starring Tom Hiddleston and Tilda Swinton. It's brilliant, but I wrote something about it a year or two ago on the website, and about sort of like loneliness and how that is an important thing in that film, and it kind of is important in this as well,
Yep.
because at the very end he says, "The only thing I have left is you," and he's about to kill her. Well, it's in a moment of rage, in one of their fights.
Hmm.
But then he stops and he says those words, and it kind of it's quite sad in the end because it is kind of like, being a vampire kind of sounds amazing, but it is a very lonely life.
Yeah, and then ultimately, yeah, they have to kill Zeus. And again,
Yeah.
that white cliff with the sea out beyond it, and then the white light of the sunrise coming up over
Uh,
them and turning to ash. And again, that there. Tell me this because we were both massive fans. Do you think Midnight Mass drew some inspiration from this? I
I
thought
would
with that
assume
scene at the
so.
end,
Yeah.
the boat scene in
Yeah.
Midnight Mass, whenever
He
he's taken,
kills
yeah, he
himself.
kills himself with the rising sun. I was like, that's Midnight Massy. And again, the religious element and all that as well. I was like, there's
Yeah.
some nice, I would imagine if I went back and watched Midnight Mass now, I'd maybe see some nice nods in there. I don't
Yeah, I'm,
know.
I'm
But
sure I've seen this pop up in conversations about Midnight Mass before.
mhm,
Obviously it was slightly different because the other character didn't know he was a vampire, but
yeah.
so it made it even more horrific. But these two, committed to killing themselves, which in the beginning, as we know, is worse than murder. That's what
Hmm.
he says to who does he say that to? The girl in the confessional.
I says it to the nurse. Yeah.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So So yeah, no, I really loved the ending. I just want to briefly mention about one of my other favorite scenes, and it's the car accident scene where, and it reminded me of another film that we covered called Raw, which is a French film
Hmm.
about cannibalism, which is very, very similar in terms of like discovering something about yourself and becoming kind of, having that lust for meat, kind of similar. But there's a scene in this where when she becomes the vampire, she causes a car accident because she wants to get the body. And I love that because there's when she steps out in front of the car, there's like that really cool shot where she gets fucking smacked and she just goes flying
Hmm.
up the road, and then obviously she gets up. But the creepy part about that was just before she jumps out in front of the car, she's like kind of like a rock. She's like curled up on the side of the road. Do you know what she reminded me of Frodo
Mm.
in
Is it
Two
Fellowship?
Towers? Yeah,
Oh,
no,
Two
it's Two
Towers.
Towers. Near towards the end of the Two Towers when he's near the Black Gate and he puts the thing over and he turns on a rock. It was kind
Mhm.
of like that. It was really creepy. But I just really liked that scene because it kind of came out of nowhere. And I think, like you mentioned earlier about the blood in the recorder, and whenever she, palms the guy's head off,
Mhm.
it does turn on its head. Not that often, but when it does, it kind of gives you a
Jokes
bit
you.
in the balls again.
Even her, the first time she uses those wee sewing clippers, and it's in that scene after she's just caused the car accident, and she grabs the guy and kind of jumps off into the trees with him,
Hmm.
and she's got him up against the tree, and she just like curiously, she's really curious. It's almost like she's not sure it's going to work, and she punctures it in, and you see that spurt, and it's an arterial spurt where it kind of goes, like a heartbeat, and her fascinated by it before she, puts her mouth to it, and I again, lovely. There's such lovely reactionary close-ups in this movie, and that's another one where you kind of have the two wee puncture ones that just
Hmm.
start spurting blood, and she takes into it. Yeah,
Well,
fantastic.
I agree with you that I loved the end. I loved the lead up to the end with her, the Mrs. Ra,
Hmm.
the reveal there and how they, that whole thing where they killed all the guests. I do feel like the film kind of did drag a little bit too long.
Hmm.
It felt longer than I think it's about 2 hours and 10 minutes, or
Yeah.
just over 2 hours, but it felt a wee bit longer than that. Um, but yeah, I love the film and I really enjoyed talking about it. We
Also,
love
Dynamite
Park Chan-wook.
soundtrack.
Oh, awesome music. Really
Great
well
soundtrack.
shot. Quite a few blues
Blues.
in
Yep.
there as well. Um, the same cinematographer who shot Old Boy and has worked with Park Chan-wook before. He also shot the new versions of Stephen King's It, and he's done loads of other non-Korean films as well. So he's probably one of the better cinematographers out there. But yeah, love talking about this. If you have not seen the film, please go and check it
Go
out
watch
as
it.
soon as
Yep.
you can. It's on Shudder.
Hmm.
It's not super horror-y, but there is horror elements in there, obviously, with the vampire, and it does get quite brutal towards the end. So, but it's really well written and really well told, and the two lead actors are phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
So,
Fantastic. Hmm.
would definitely
Well,
be
all the
check
actually
it out.
the whole cast is
Yeah,
fantastic in
yeah,
this
yeah, they're
film.
all good. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's quite a small cast, but they're all fantastic. So that's it. That's season 6 done and dusted, Danny.
What? What?
What
What?
are we going to do for
Well,
3 or 4 weeks or
as we
whatever?
said, there's stuff
We do.
going
We're
on. There's
working on
stuff
our
going on.
stuff.
Keep an eye on the socials. What are the socials again, Gav?
Social
Tell
medias,
people where
yeah.
they can find
We're
us.
all on Twitter and Instagram. It's at the Fright Club NI. We're also on Facebook, so go and search Facebook, type at the Fright Club NI, and we should be there somewhere. Please like and follow the pages, and that's the best way to support us and tell your horror friends about us. You can also check out the website. It's www.thefrightclubni.com. We had do movie reviews and editorials and exclusive interviews. And what do they have to do today, Danny?
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on the video. Also, if you want to keep up to date as to when season 7 drops, we would highly recommend subscribing. So make sure you do
Do
that.
yes, that'd be awesome. And if you want to support us financially, a little link on the website. There's a little support button at the top. You can donate a couple of quid. It's
We appreciate you don't have to. You
you
don't
don't
have
have to,
to, but we do appreciate when people do. So thank you very much, anyone
Yeah,
who has done so in the past. It really means a lot to us.
it does.
Mhm.
So I think that's it, is it?
Yeah, I
Anything
think I
else we
think
need to
we're
mention?
done.
Yeah.
Oh Jesus, Gav, I've a wild thirst, so I'm gonna
Oh,
have to go, and I'm gonna have to find a wee tap to
go
sup
with a
on.
drink this here.
Hmm. Well, does it taste bloody?
That's all right. Yeah.
Bloody delicious.
I'm definitely not going to like.
No.
Where's my recorder out here? It's out there somewhere. I know. So yes. So taking a break for a couple of weeks. Follow us on the socials to get notified about when season 7 will be premiering.
Hmm.
Shouldn't be too long. Couple of weeks, probably 4 to 6 weeks or so.
Yeah.
In the meantime, stay safe, take care, and please do talk about Fright Club.
Yeah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.